Hello, it's me. Just popping in the beginning to say parts of this story do get a little bit hard to take at points. So, if you are out walking alone in the wilderness or in a forest while you're listening to this, maybe this isn't the time for this episode. Maybe wait until you're indoors. Okay. By the time you see her running up from behind, you better watch not to run too fast. You're falling out of time. Hunted, watched, and he wouldn't move. As much as we tried, he just wouldn't leave. His eyes said no. You're the one who will back away. But I couldn't. None of us could. We just had to watch. It's a tragedy. And there's no other way to say it. Welcome to Extraordinary Stories Podcast. Hey, how are you? You well? Are you good? I am. Alright, I'm going to do a couple of very quick shout outs and then we'll get to the story. So first of all, I'm not entirely sure about this name. I'm going to give it a go. I think is it Leonel? Leonel? I thought it was Lionel at first, but I don't think it is. I think it's Leonel. Who got in touch on Instagram just to say, enjoying the podcast, thank you very much, and asked the question, who is Barry? I said, Leonel. I am an international man of mystery. I couldn't possibly tell you. So thank you for getting in touch. Lottie, who also got in touch on Instagram to send me a photo of a woman called Disco Sally. Now, Disco Sally, at 77 years old, found her way onto the dance floor of Studio 54, and the photos of her ripping up the dance floor are amazing, so thank you, Lottie. And Charlotte Olivia. Now, Charlotte did something that is so lovely. She made her mum, Annie Frodsham, a Valentine's card, and on it were the words, "You are extraordinary." And Charlotte drew the podcast logo on this card, and it looks amazing. It just looks incredible. What a lovely thing to do for your mum, Annie. So, Charlotte and Annie, hello and thank you for listening. Okay. Right, well, that's the shout outs done. Let's get on with the story. Alright, my dazzling dolls. Are you ready? Okay, let's go. Okay, we are in Canada. Oh, Canada. And we're in 2009. Now, we know, don't we, it's famously hard to break into the music industry. Believe me, I know. I've tried. Well, in 1990, in Toronto, the Luciau family gave birth to a beautiful baby girl. They called her Taylor, and the music industry would be Taylor's destiny. Let's just talk a little bit about how she got there. So, growing up with her parents, Emily and Ray, she grows up in a neighbourhood in Toronto, and she's really interested in music from a young age. Now, as a teenager, she starts to get into folk music, country music, and around about 14, she goes to a vocal coach who gives her some singing lessons. She absolutely loves it. And then she starts to pick up a guitar and starts to learn. So, as a young teenager, she's this blossoming singer, songwriter. Just to give you a kind of idea of what Taylor looks like, she has dark hair and it's very, very long. She's pretty. She's got her own style. She's got a really natural look about her. It's lovely. There's lots of pictures you'll see of her with a guitar strap and, her guitar around her neck and there's lots of photographs of her standing in the woods with a suitcase and her guitar. That's the kind of look. Now, she would go on to study performance and she would specialise in musical theatre. And when she graduates, she decides it's the life of a musician for her. So she takes her guitar, her singing voice, which is absolutely gorgeous, and off she goes, entering into that big, scary world of trying to make it. I mean, I was joking earlier, but I can't imagine how hard it must be to, if you want to be a musician, trying to break into the industry. Tough times. And this would have been about 2006, 2007. Now, for Taylor, because she is very talented, she starts to get noticed. At first, she plays some small gigs, and sometimes these are in front of people from record companies. And really what makes people notice, right? What makes people sit up and pay attention is that her voice is just great. It really is. But it doesn't seem to be the voice of a 17, 18-year-old. It's got this, more mature quality to it. It kind of sounds like she's a bit older than her years. One record executive would say, Taylor's vocal style and consummate songwriting craft belie her years. Indeed, her songs tell the tales of a seeker with a sage wisdom atypical of most, let alone people of her age. So she sounds older. Well, maybe I don't mean older, maybe I mean wiser than her years. And I mean, I get that. I get that, right? Because I'm only 21 and I get people saying, Barry, you are so wise, so full of wisdom. And I say, I know. I don't know how I do it. I really don't. So changing her surname to Mitchell, Taylor is given the opportunity to record and release a 4-track EP in 2007. And with this, she starts to get some radio airplay. I mean, this is brilliant. So that idea of breaking into the music industry, she's doing it. She's on the track here. What this leads to is her being able to take her music on tour around Canada. So she plays various gigs to start with, some small, then they start to get bigger and bigger. And then she's invited to the Winnipeg Folk Festival. Now, this is no small affair. This is 80,000 people attending this. So it's a big deal to land this. Kind of people that have played there before are big acts like K.D. Lang, Sheryl Crow, the Bahamas, the Bare Naked Ladies. Big acts. And now, Taylor Mitchell. The other thing, as well as her voice, that impresses people is that she isn't precocious. She's not some bratty kind of teenage angsty sound. It's quite adult. Her music's quite straight up, quite no bullshit. Basically, it's not whiny. Now, when I say that, right, I'm not dissing music by teenagers here by any stretch of the imagination. I will, right, hand on my heart, say, and I mean this with from the absolute bottom of my heart to the day I die, Mbop by Hanson is one of the best songs ever written, and they were about 12. I mean, that is a tune. That is a banger. I don't believe in such a thing as guilty pleasures when it comes to songs, right? I just don't believe in it. I just don't buy it. You like what you like, and I have to say, Mbop, it's up there. And I say this, if you haven't listened to Mbop in a while, do yourself a favour. Get it on Spotify, and you will have a very happy 3 minutes in your life. I mean, I suppose, I think when someone becomes a star when they are 18 or 19, there could be this assumption that, oh, it's all going to be that teenagey nonsense, but I don't think it is. And I mean, I really think for me, I could have been the next big thing in music if you know, I had just picked up the guitar when I was young instead of, like, you know, going to tap dancing lessons. I mean, a fat lot of good tap dancing lessons has ever done for me, for God's sake. I think maybe if I ever do, like, live Extraordinary Stories events, maybe I'll include a tap dancing section. I can just see it now. It will work so well. Can you imagine? I'd make it really dramatic, right? Lights down at the end, and as I say, and so ends the story. Everyone would think that's the end, and then I'm like, da-da, and I break into tap dance. What a joy. So anyway, back to the actual story, back to what this is about. So for a few years, this is the kind of level of success that Taylor Mitchell is at, right? So she's playing these festivals. She goes on to record an album. It's titled For Your Consideration. And next, she gets nominated for a Canadian Folk Music Award for Young Performer of the Year. Pretty good. Pretty bloody good. Taylor writes on her Facebook, she's having the craziest summer ever. So she's out and about. She's on her own in 2009 and she's touring. It's October and she finds herself in Nova Scotia. And it's in between gigs. It's a sunny October afternoon, and Taylor, who loves going out for walks, decides that she's going to go to the Cape Breton Highlands National Park, which is this huge, big, lovely national park. And it includes something called the Skyline Trail. Now, I've never been there in person. I've never been to Canada. But Canadian listeners, I'd love to hear your experience of this. From what I can see, it is stunning. I mean, it's so beautiful. Imagine this trail a bit like it's got a very, very, very slow incline upwards. And when you're walking up it, to the right, you can just see sea. All above, there is just so much sky, hence why it's called the Skyline Trail. And to your left, you've just got these gorgeous, gorgeous, big, tall green trees. So it's beautiful. I mean, it kind of looks like, this is just from the images, but it kind of looks like you're walking up towards the sky. I mean, this is just, it's absolutely gorgeous. So on the trail, there is an access road from the car park. So you would park up your car and get ready to walk up the trail. So here's Taylor on this sunny afternoon. Loves nature, and she really wants to go on the Skyline Trail. So as she sets off, she's going inwards, and there's two people walking towards her, coming back from the trail. They've just finished it by coming back. This is two American tourists, and they pass each other. They exchange a bit of pleasantries, and the two tourists, they head back to their car, leaving Taylor to go on her way. As the tourists are slowly moving away from the trail towards their car, about 10, maybe 15 minutes has passed, and then they hear a sound. It's a blood-curdling scream. It pierces the air. They can hear shouts of "no, please." This is followed by more screaming. They freeze, not sure what to do. They remember the young girl they just saw walking into the trail, and they panic. Now this is a moment of decision for the two tourists. Do they run to where the screaming sound is coming from, or do they call for help? They choose that they're going to run back to the car park as soon as possible and call for help. They get to the telephone box, and inside of it they see the number to call if you think there's trouble. This connects them to the park supervisor and to the Royal Canadian Mounted Police. So they stand in the car park, having placed the call, waiting. They haven't heard any more screams for a few minutes. Now, as they're waiting, a group arrive in the car park, and this is a group of 4 Australian tourists who've arrived to go hiking. They see the 2 American tourists looking distressed, and they ask, "What's wrong?" And the American tourists explain they've just left the trail. A young woman entered alone, and the screams that they heard terrified them. So they made the call for help. The 4 Australians decide there isn't time to waste here. They need to go towards where these screams were heard and help whoever is in trouble. And so the 6 of them start in the direction that they saw Taylor walk. Hurrying as fast as they can, about 5 minutes into the walk, they start to see various objects on the ground, on the path of the trail. At first they see a small knife, and then they see some keys. Next they see what looks like a piece of ripped clothing, and there's blood on the clothing. The further they go, they begin to see more drops of blood, streaks of it on the path. Eventually they arrive at a little wash house. It's just a small one, a little building for those on the trail needing it. And the door to this wash house is covered in blood. And then they see Taylor Mitchell. She is lying on her back on the ground, covered in blood. And next to her is a male coyote. As the 6 tourists stare at the scene, they can see that the coyote sees them, and it looks back at Taylor. One of them will describe that it looked as if it was saying, "She's mine, stay back." They can see that Taylor is alive and is watching this. Stunned and completely unsure what to do. 3 of the tourists decide to run at the coyote and see if they can scare it off. It doesn't work. It barely flinches. Instead, it circles Taylor's body and it keeps its focus locked on her. So now they're in a battle with this animal who is refusing to leave. The coyote is dripping blood from its mouth, and it has Taylor's blood on its fur. Again, they try charging at it, this time quicker, thinking this will frighten it. It doesn't move. They call out to Taylor that she needs to stay still. But Taylor's going to have to stay still because the animal has attacked her legs and her head so badly that she can't move anyway. Her body and her face are covered in bite marks. She's losing a lot of blood. The tourists will describe that it feels like an age that they stand there for, with the coyote stalking around Taylor's body before the police arrive. One of the officers looks at the scene and he tries immediately what the tourist did. He charges at the coyote, thinking it's going to run, and it doesn't work. It stays put. Eventually the officer takes out his gun and he fires it at the coyote, not to kill it, but close enough to get a shot near it and try to make it go away. And it works. The shot makes the animal move away from Taylor, but only a few hundred yards away. It goes into some trees and it's still visibly watching her. So at this point, the tourists and the police, what they do is they surround Taylor. They make like a little circle around her and they call for an ambulance to come as soon as possible. The tourists, the police, they're trying to talk to her, and while she's conscious, she's very, very weak. They manage to get only 2 pieces of information from her. Her name is Taylor, and she's 19. When the ambulance does arrive, she is put in the back of the ambulance, and her injuries are so bad that the 2 paramedics get into the back with her, and the police officer, the one who fired the shot, he drives the ambulance to the hospital. She is taken to the closest place, the Sacred Heart Community Health Centre. And once she's there and assessed, they decide that they're going to have to move her to the Queen Elizabeth Hospital because her condition is so bad. Her family are contacted and they're told, you'll have to come quickly. She's in critical condition. Her family try and get there as fast as they can. But 7 hours after the coyote attack, Taylor Mitchell's bright light is extinguished. Her loss of blood at the scene and the injuries to her head from the attack have just been too much for her body to take. And she dies in the hospital. Horrendous. So the tragic news that she's dead is given to her family and to those who knew her. Now in the days that follow, there's a mix of things in the Canadian reaction to this. And I say Canadian reaction, but the headlines actually make it worldwide. There's an outpouring of course, shock, there's grief, there's sadness, but there's also anger. There's real anger at these coyotes. And what it does is it propels people into action to want to kill coyotes. In the days that follow, the tourists that were at the scene, they are thrown into the media spotlight. They are made to tell their experience over and over. And they disclose actually a piece of interesting information which only comes out really through a news interview. They described that actually when they were walking on the trail, this is like maybe 10-15 minutes before they met Taylor, they had seen 2 coyotes walking the trail, and the coyotes had come really close to them. And they couldn't believe how close these animals had come, because they'd always understood it. Coyotes were scared of humans. However, they said that they were walking with such confidence that actually the tourists found themselves moving out of the way of the coyotes. One of the tourists had turned and taken a photograph of the coyotes. And it's kind of unbelievable how close they are to humans and don't seem to care or be bothered. So these ones that they had seen, were these the same ones responsible for her death? Or were there a pack of them running all over this park? So that only adds to people's, we've got to get the coyotes, we've got to get them killed. Basically, this sort of vigilante, this group pop up and they decide they're just going to go and kill them all, and police have to step in and be like, no, we're not now all just running into the woods with guns to start killing coyotes. We're not. And this is interesting. Taylor's mum steps up really quickly. I mean, that poor woman is going through this horrendous shock and grief, but she steps up in the days after it and says, stop, this is not what Taylor would have wanted. Like, she loved animals, she loved nature, so please don't people just start running about trying to shoot every wild coyote that you ever see. So an investigation into it is done. I mean, as much as can be done. And from that, there's different theories. One of the theories is that it's possible that on the trail, Taylor might have become aware of these coyotes and realised that in some way they might have been stalking her. It's possible from the position that they found her keys and the knife that she might have been trying to get back to the car park, but there's really no way to be sure that that's what could have happened. Police say she could have been trying to get back to the car park because she knew that they were after her, or she could have decided that she was going to walk onwards hoping they'd leave her alone. It's guesswork. There's another theory which emerges. This is on the news in the following days. It's believed that there might have been a pack of coyotes and there was a baby, and that she wandered over to them and that she somehow tried to interfere with the baby. Now, I don't like this theory. I feel it's a bit victim blaming. It's her fault. And to be fair, where are they getting that from? Where does that come from? I understand the theory that, yes, animals will attack if they think that their young is being threatened. But there's no evidence that Taylor had her head screwed on. This was not this wasn't some idiot who thought, oh, I'll tell you what I'll do, I'll just wander over to a pack of wild coyotes and start interfering with their baby. I just don't really buy that theory. The fact that the washhouse door was covered in blood suggests another theory, and that is that once the attack started, she may have tried to get into the inside of the washhouse, but she was pulled back by the animals. But like I say, these are just theories. We won't know. We never will know. However, all this theory, all this anger from people who want, it's like they want revenge. They want these animals taken down for what's happened. And those in control of the park decide that these particular coyotes have to be destroyed. Officers set up in the park traps. They station officers all around the trail. And one officer in particular is asked to stay near the wash house in case this particular coyote returns. This is what they're really looking for. They want that one coyote who stood over her body. In the days that follow, 8 coyotes in that park are killed. Now, these are not just randomly killed. These are coyotes that police say were showing aggressive behaviour. When they were being watched, when they were being examined, they showed aggressive behaviour, and that's why they had to be destroyed. Of the 8, they discover something interesting about 3 of them. One of them has blood all over its fur, dried blood, and it's Taylor's. It's determined that this is the male who stood over the body. Another of the coyotes, a completely separate one, had remains of a human being in its stomach. A third is also connected. There's no real clarity as to how they connect the third coyote, but they do. So this leads to a report from police that they believe this wasn't just one, this was 3 coyotes who attacked her, and not just one as they first suspected. At these killings, Taylor's mother once again speaks out, and she says, when the decision had been made to kill the pack of coyotes, I clearly heard Taylor's voice, and she said, please don't. This is their space. Her mother says she wouldn't have wanted their demise, especially as a result of her own. She was passionate about animals. She was an environmentalist, and she was planning to volunteer at the Toronto Wildlife Centre in the coming months. But in the end, because of possible dangers to others and the fact that this is the only recorded death in Canadian history from a coyote attack, Taylor's mother sadly didn't get her way. Taylor's funeral took place, and it was a celebration. It was a place to share her music, her gift, and as her record company manager put it, her funeral is a place to say goodbye to a sweet, compassionate, vibrant, and phenomenally talented young woman. Since Taylor Mitchell's death, there has never been another death reported caused by coyotes. She remains the only one in Canadian history. And so ends the story. I'm sure maybe you all get this when you listen to multiple podcasts, be they true crime, be they whatever you listen to, but you ever just get a story that you just can't get out of your head? You literally can't stop thinking about it. This one for me, for this past 2-3 weeks, it's really been in my head. I just couldn't quite get to recording this one because I had other ones to do first, but yeah, oh god. So yeah, since reading this one, I just couldn't get it out of my brain. So there you go. I'm going to go. You can contact me. You know where to do that. please do. Please join the Facebook group. Be lovely to see you in there, mixing it up, having a chat. Okay. Until the next time we speak. Okay. Goodbye.
It didn't affect me really one way or the other. I would imagine from the look on his face, let's get it on, let's do it, let's get it over. Let's get it on, let's do it, let's get it over.